One Wintry Night by Ruth Bell Graham, illustrated by Richard Jesse Watson. Chapter 6. The Man Who Listened. "That ain't the end," the boy said hopefully as he smoothed the purring cat. "No," the woman smiled. "It's just the beginning. You see, God was determined to make a way for man to come back home. It happened like this. God still loved these people he had made, for he does not change. No matter how badly Adam and Eve had sinned, they were still his. So though he drove them from the garden, he continued to watch over them. Many years passed, and God kept watching over Adam and Eve. They had 2 sons, Cain and Abel. And when those boys grew up, Cain killed Abel, his only brother. For the first time ever, Adam and Eve saw someone dead, and their own son at that. They wept till there were no tears left, and awoke the next day to weep again. They realized once more what a terrible thing it is to disobey God. Adam and Eve had more children, and those children had children, until there were whole cities of people, and most of them acted as badly as Cain. God kept looking for someone who would listen to him and obey. Someone to whom he could be a friend. But they didn't listen. Just as the first 2 people forgot about God, so did those who came after them. Instead of living in peace, they fought with each other. The soldier who killed the most people was the greatest hero. And when they weren't fighting, the children of Adam liked noisy pleasures. At their parties, they stuffed themselves, shouted, and drank far into the night. In all the noisy confusion, people did not hear the voice of God speaking to their hearts. No one heard him saying over and over that this was not the way to live, that this was not what he had created them for. God saw how wicked the people had become. Their thoughts were continually evil. It made him very angry. Grieving, he decided to wash mankind from the face of the earth so he could start over again. In all that wickedness, one man stood out, for he was just and upright, a man who walked with God. His name was Noah. God decided to save Noah and his family from the flood that was coming. He told Noah to build an ark, a huge boat with many rooms inside. And God told him exactly how to build it. It would be big enough to hold Noah's whole family, plus some of every kind of animal and bird in the world. When Noah's neighbors saw him building a huge boat on dry land, many miles from the ocean, they laughed until their sides hurt and tears rolled down their cheeks. But Noah didn't care what people thought. He wanted only to obey God. After the last board was pegged in place, Noah and his 3 sons led the animals into the ark. His wife and his sons' wives carried in the food, seed for the birds, grain for the cattle and horses, dried fruit for themselves. Enough to last for a long, long time. As Noah and his family and the animals waited inside the ark, Noah's neighbors laughed louder than ever. While they were laughing, the rain began to fall. Through the downpour, those in the dark heard a strange sound. The laughter had turned to wailing. Then the air was pierced by screams. Fists pounded on the outside of the ark. Noah and his family could do nothing, for God had shut them in. Soon the pounding stopped. Cries grew fewer, and then there was only the steady pouring of the rain. Day and night the raging storm continued. In the flickering light of their oil lamps inside the ark, Noah's family sat and listened to the rain pounding on the roof. After many days, they felt the ark gently rocking, and they knew it was floating on the water. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. When at last it stopped, Noah opened the window to look out. There was nothing but water, stretching as far as his eyes could see. Not even the mountain peaks showed. Several weeks passed while they floated on. The animals wished they could get out and run. The deer paced back and forth in their stalls. The ark began to smell as bad as a dirty barn on a hot August day. Noah and his family wondered if they would ever see dry land again. Then one day Noah opened the window and lifted out a dove. The dove eagerly took to the skies. It flapped its wings and soared above the water until it was out of sight. Several hours later, the dove returned, holding an olive leaf in its beak. That made all the animals in the ark very happy, because they knew the water must finally be going down. A whole year went by before the earth was dry enough to walk on. Then out of the ark they all tumbled, Noah and his family and all the animals. The cows kicked up their hooves and bounded across the hills as though spring had come after a long winter. Noah's family was so glad to get out of the crowded ark, they wanted to run and jump and turn cartwheels. But before he did anything else, Noah built an altar and offered a solemn prayer of thanks to God. God promised Noah and his family that he would never again destroy the earth with a flood, and he placed a rainbow in the sky as a sign that he would never forget his promise. At first, the people didn't forget either. Noah's sons remembered God and the great flood he had sent. They told their own sons and daughters about it, and the sons and daughters told their children. But it was starting to seem like a story from long, long ago. People could no longer recall exactly why Noah and his family were rescued from the flood. They forgot how important it was to listen to God. God intended for everyone to live together in peace, but people began once again to stray from his plan. If a man was strong, he would take all the wheat from his neighbor's fields and all the fruit from his trees and lock them up in his own storehouses. The strongest and richest declared themselves rulers, making whole cities their slaves. They invented many fake gods, a god to help them win wars, a god to make it rain, a god to chase wolves away. They even tried to imagine what these gods looked like, and they carved them out of wood, stone, and even metal. Watching the people, God saw they were getting more confused all the time. There is only one God, he kept trying to tell them. It was no use. They didn't hear him. Most people had ignored God for so long, they didn't even recognize his voice. God thought of another plan to rescue his people, a plan that would one day lead to that first Christmas in Bethlehem. To make the plan work, God needed someone who was still faithful to him, and he knew just where to find him. This is the end of chapter 6 of One Wintry Night. If you're enjoying this read aloud and would like to hear more, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.